Hi, my name's Catherine and I'm the owner here at Studio Laroche. Today I'm going to show you how I make my stoneware fruit bowls. So for the bowl that I'm going to make today, I'm going to weigh out about 6 pounds of clay. This is a nice gray stoneware that once it will be fired will turn a nice chocolatey brown, and it'll pair really nicely with the glaze that I'll be using. So that's a bit too much. Skim off the top. Close. That's about it. So right now I'm wedging my clay, and what that does is that it makes sure that there's no air bubbles trapped in the clay, and it also makes sure that the moisture is really well spread out so that I can throw really evenly. It takes a little bit of time and it's a good workout, but it's a really necessary part of the process. And then it gives you a nice little spiral. So when I throw, I use plaster bats. And what that does is that the clay will stick really well to it when it's wet because it's so absorbent, and then it will release really easily. Now I'm going to center my clay. And make sure that all the little platelets, the little molecules that make up the clay, are well aligned. I like throwing with a sponge because it allows me to apply a more even pressure. As I'm bringing my clay back down and centering it, I'm creating a base that's approximately the same diameter as the base of my piece that I want to have, so that I don't have too much trimming to do afterwards. Once I'm happy with the width of my floor, I'm going to use this tool to compress the clay. So I'm just pushing down a little bit, making sure that it's base nice and flat. So I'm slowly applying pressure at the base, and I'm pulling my clay upwards. So I'm pinching it up. Once I've got a nice height, I can start opening up my form a bit more and really forming my final piece. So I'm really getting the bowl shape. I like making these fruit bowls because I know that none of them are ever going to look exactly the same. It allows me a lot more freedom when it comes to the actual shape of the piece. I get to play around a bit more. So this is a wet box. I use it to dry my pieces really slowly. All it is simply a box wrapped in plastic, and that allows the humidity to be dispersed really evenly. You want your pieces to dry really evenly because when clay dries, it shrinks. It'll have a tendency to warp or crack, and that's something that we definitely want to avoid. Right now I'm just making sure that my bowl is centered. So I'm sure it is. I'll come secure it in place with a bit of clay. So when I tap, I'm just listening to hear the thickness of the bottom of the pot because I don't want to carve all the way through. So I can tell that I still have a bit of clay. It's solid enough. I'm taking off a bit more from the base as well, because since I'll be drilling through the bowl, you'll be able to see the thickness, and I really want to make sure that I have equal walls all the way through. A little detail that I do at the end as well is that I trim a little angle right on the foot, like this. And then that way, that makes the glaze cleanup at the end a lot easier. And once I'm happy with the form, I take my little stamp and I sign my piece. So now that I've trimmed my piece, I'm going to be able to start drilling. To do this part of the process, I wait until my pieces are leather hard. It's the stage where it's soft enough to drill through and trim, but still stiff enough to not warp the piece while you're working with it. Now that I've drilled my piece, I'm going to set it aside to fully dry. Once it's fully dried, I'll be able to put it in the kiln and bisque fire it at 1,945 degrees Fahrenheit. What that does is that it only semi-vitrifies the clay, so it's not fully fired yet. That allows me to glaze the piece because it keeps it very porous. These pieces right here have already been bisqued. As you can see, they've shrunken a little bit. So now that I've bisqued my piece, I'm going to mix a glaze to be able to add color to my bowl. So a lot of these ingredients are really volatile, they're really fine dusts, so it's important for me to wear a mask to protect my lungs. So first I'm gonna weigh out all of my ingredients. I'll put them in this bucket where there's already a bit of water, and then I'll mix it all up. I'll sieve it a few times, and then it'll be ready for my piece to be dipped in. I just mixed together some Gursley borate, some talc, some silica, and some red iron oxide. That is going to give me a really nice deep red glaze called oxblood. So to make sure that my color is nice and smooth, I'm going to sieve it a few times in this 80 mesh sieve. So when you're mixing glaze, you want it to have the consistency of coffee cream. So you want it to be not too watery, but not too thick either, so that you have a good coverage of your piece. Okay. So now that it's had the chance to dry, I'm just going to clean off the bottom of it so that there's no glaze that touches the kiln shelf, because if it does, it will fuse to my kiln shelf. And I'm just following the little 45-degree angle that I had trimmed when I was trimming the bottom to have a nice clean edge to the piece. Now that the piece is glazed, I'm firing it to cone 6, which is equal to 2,232 degrees Fahrenheit. The firing takes about 24 hours to reach temperature and then cool back down. So I'll be able to take it out of the kiln tomorrow morning. So here's the bowl freshly thrown. Here it is trimmed, drilled, bisqued, glazed, and fired. Those are all the steps that it takes to make my fruit bowls. You can find these as well as all of my other pieces at studiolaroche.com. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Studio Laroche. Thank you to Stereochroma for filming this video, and thank you for watching.